Hey guys, welcome to Gorilla Tag Modding Part 2. In this part of the series, we'll be diving into creating objects inside Gorilla Tag. Now, I'm going to show a couple of examples on how to do this, and then once we get that down, we're going to apply that knowledge to our own menu mod. So before we actually get to the coding, let me get something out the way. Now, as I mentioned before in the last episode, I'm going to be doing explanations in my code. Now, here's how this is going to go. So I'm going to first write the code and then I'll do an explanation and then we'll continue on to the next part. And that's what we're going to get for this video. So once you are in, so the first example that we're going to do is a platform mod. So, so I'm actually going to change this to like maybe like flat. It is flat button press. Then I'll have to change this. Just like that. Now, in order to create the platform, in order to create an object, you can do game object. You can create a parameter called game object. So actually, I want to destroy this after using it. So I'm gonna do this. Make a new game object. Name it. Now I'm gonna add this null blessing operator. I'm pretty sure it's called. So it's just basically makes it a nullable object, so I don't get a no reference exception or get that warning. Now I'm gonna go over here. And I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna actually make this a cube. So the game objects I create primitive. Primitive type is gonna be a cube. Then it's not gonna have a period. Now I want this to be directly below the hand, so it's gonna spawn directly below the hand. So we're actually gonna do. So we're gonna just get it transformed and its position, and then it's gonna be equal to the hand. So now because I want it to be below the hand, I'm just gonna add. Let's get back to three. I don't want to make it go to the left, more to the right. Now I do want it to go down a little bit, so I'm negative 7, 3, 5, 6. There we go. Now for the rotation, I just want it to be flat. So I'll just do flat trading guide and then for the scale. Now I'm gonna make those zil 0.3, 0.3. Then I'm gonna make zoom. Because I want it to be clean. Then I do the same like this. Yeah. Yep. Now we need to render the object, so we're gonna do save like creating. But now we're gonna get the component. It's gonna be that different. Now the game object automatically points to the dirt. And then first I'm gonna set the shader. Because you can't set the shader before the color is now spinning. We get the material. And shader. Shader up. Shader got somewhere. And then we're going to use Gorilla Tag shader thing. So actually going to make this a string. Now it has to be this exactly amount of guys will you set the I'm just gonna set the color to like what they usually set to like. There you go. Now we actually need to destroy the thing. Now before that, I don't want this to be being created every frame, otherwise your game will lag. So I'm going to check if it's null. And if it's null, if it's null, then we can create it. But if it wasn't that, shit. So if it is, so if it is not, then we can destroy it. I'm just gonna use Unity to destroy something. And then we're gonna say now I actually gotta set this to null just in case it doesn't work. And there you go. The entire thing's saved. Now we can try running it. So once your thing is done, here I need to find it. I'm just gonna do the same thing, or you can put it in quick access like I usually do for all modified Linux. Like on my list is 9 or 18 now. Do not question that. Please. So now we're just gonna look for a thing. Sometimes you plugging, stopping and table. And we're gonna run our game. So now that we're in the game, I might as well just go out here. So as you can see, when we press our primary controller, as you can see, the platform now works. You can now use your platform. It's actually pretty cool. You can see you're moving around and stuff. But let's continue on to the next project.
Now it is time for the explanation. Since this whole block of code is in the update method, that means that it's being ran every frame. I'm setting this Boolean to the left controller primary button Boolean, because Booleans are not reference types unlike strings. I check if the button is being pressed, but also check if the platform object is null. My reason for doing that is to have only one instance of the platform object. Since I'm on 90 Hz, without this other check, it would create a platform object every 90th of a second, lagging my game every time I press the X button. Inside the if block, I make the object a cube mesh. Then I set the object's position to be 0.03 units under the player's left hand. Then, I set the object's rotation to 0 so that it'll be flat. Now you'll need to set the mesh renderer's shader and color if you'll want to see the object in-game. Make sure that you set the shader before the color, otherwise you won't be able to see the object. Finally, I destroy the object and set it to null if the X button is not being pressed. Note that I check if the platform object exists. Doing this will avoid you getting a null reference exception.
So for the next part of this project, we'll be putting cubes over each player's head within a lobby. So let's get started. So I just deleted everything else because for this exact project. Now, we need to figure out what we need to do for this. Now, for one, we need to be able to keep track of the cubes, so we can either have a list or a dictionary. But for this specific project, I'll be using the dictionary, and you'll see why in the explanation. So I'm gonna go ahead and type in dictionary. Now, we're going to be accessing each VR rig of the players. So I'm just going to do VR rig, and then we're going to have the game object for the cubes. Just going to name this like VR rigs. Now over here, I need to check if I'm in the room. So, but I can't. Wait, I think we can. Wait, no, yes, I can check it. So I'm just going to use Gorilla Tags on a network system. I'm just going to do network system.instance that in room. I'm going to check if I'm in a room. And if I am, then I go through all the players. So what I'm going to do is for each VR rig in VR rig cache. Now again, I do have to go and do like my research and stuff. Like do the reverse engineering, so that's how I get this stuff. And then I'm gonna do your cache to active rigs. Now, important thing. I don't want to be creating a whole bunch of cubes on each player, so I'm actually gonna filter out. So I'm just gonna use a link. So you guys use this the wrong link. I'm using a link player. Sorry. Just gonna do this. So I'm just gonna name this variable. Now we're gonna check. We're gonna get each rig that has not been added to this dictionary. So we're just gonna do this one not to use contains key. There we go. Just like that. Now we're gonna create the cube. So we're just gonna do game object. Just gonna name it cube. Game object. I mean, not the game object. Game object. Wait, what's that cube? Transform that parent. It's going to be equal to the rig. That head. Nice. Transform. Okay. And I'm going to transform that position equal to the rig. Transform that position. Actually, instead of that, we can actually do local position. So it's just the position relative to the parent. I'm just gonna do this. Let's remove. I don't know, not quick. My bad, guys. Sorry. They could do that. So just imagine when you set something to a parent, just imagine it's that parent is the center of the world when you're using local position. Just think about that. Now when you set the rotation, the rotation is not going to be anything special. There we go. Now the scale. Now the scale. The scale. Just gonna do one. Now the cubes are gonna be really big, but I need that, to be honest. Now we need to actually like render the guess I'll just do that. And then we gotta set the list. I mean, now we gotta add them to the dictionary. So we're just gonna do rigs. Rig equals keep it. Now this is just another short way of adding this to the dictionary. It's just basically the same as doing rigs.add rig and keep it. These are just both the same, but I'd rather do this because it's shorter. Now we gotta make sure everything is correct. Now we can go to project. So now that we're in, we're just gonna go in the lobby and see what happens. And yep, it works. There's cubes all over the head. Now I can't move because the collider's kind of just keeping me stuck. But yeah.
Now it is time for the explanation. I'm first checking if I'm in a server to avoid a null reference exception. Then I go through all the rigs in the server and use a link query to only get rigs that have not been added to the dictionary. This makes sure that only one cube is added per player and not hundreds every second. Then I create a cube object and parent it to the player rig's head. Since local position is the position relative to the parent, I set the object's local position to 0 so that it'll be right on the player rig's head. After setting the scale, rotation, and rendering, I add the rig and cube object as a key value pair to the dictionary to ensure that there are no duplicates of the object and that all the cubes will appear properly on each player's head.
Okay guys, we're about to move on to the final part of this video. Now we're going to be creating the panel for the menu. Now, in this one I will not be doing an explanation because it's pretty much like the platforms one except for parenting it to the hand. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's get started. Okay, so you can delete everything else. Then we're going to set up the menu input system. So I'm just going to create it in bold and call it is menu button. Press. Just like that. Now I'm going to come over here and set it to the controller input folder input. Now you gotta remember, I'm doing this because it's not a reference type. Now, if these were reference type, they would point to the same memory location. And because they point to the same memory location, if you change either one of them, they will both get changed. But in the instance that this is value type, and yet it is, it's just gonna get a copy of this and set this to a copy of this. So we do have to do it every frame, so kind of act like a reference type. So I'm just gonna use the X button, so the left controller primary button. And then we need to create a new class. Now, I'm doing this to be organized. Oh. Yeah, I kind of had to redo this. I kind of messed up. So, when you're in here it's by accident. You'll have this by default. You have this by default, but you want to have it to like a public class. Menu. Huh? And then you want it to inherit from mono behavior. Now inside here, I'm gonna have two public voids, so I'm gonna have one called create menu. And then I'm gonna have one called destroy menu. Just like that. Now, I'm gonna have the name object. I gotta use this operator. And then I'm gonna name it menu object. And it's gonna be null. Now we're gonna come back over here. Actually, we have to do one more thing. So, I want there to be one instance of this menu, but also to be publicly accessible. So I'm just gonna do, so when the script loads, we're gonna set an instance equal to this. So actually we have to create a public static instance of this menu, just like this. And then we're just gonna set so the instance equals this. Now I put it like this because it's much faster. This is called a lambda expression. Now you could put in curly brackets, but I just like it like this because it's much shorter. So we're gonna come back over here. We're gonna do the input system stuff. So if it's being pressed, so we have to check if the menu button is being pressed and the menu and the menu object. So in order to get the menu object, we just gotta do menu. We're gonna do menu dot. So we gotta do menu dot instance dot menu object. Now actually you have to make this a public game object. I don't know why I did not do that. Just like that. So now this public, you can access it. Now we're gonna check if it's null. Now we do this so that we're only creating one instance of the menu object at a time. And I'll just add create menu in here. No, gotta remember you gotta reference this. And then you can create menu. Just like that. Now we're gonna check if the button's not being pressed. And the menu object is not null. Then we're gonna delete. Then we're gonna destroy the menu. Just like that. Now the reason why I'm doing this is so that we don't get a no reference exception. Because if we try to destroy the menu while it still exists, then it will cause an error. And that's not what we want. Now, all of this is done in here. We can actually continue on to making the actual menu. So, I'm just gonna make this a queue. Pretty sure anybody would. And then we're gonna set its parent equal to the left hand. The player's left hand. Just like that. I get all this information from using Unity Explorer. I mean, it's pretty simple for me. And then we're gonna do manual OBJ. Transfer my position. Now we're gonna set the position. We're actually gonna set the local position to be equal to vector period.0. You still gotta remember the local position is the position relative to the parent. So since it's that means that the parent is gonna be like the center of the world when you're using local position. So if I set it to 0, 0, the center of the world is gonna be the parent. So it's gonna be right on the parent. And that's what I want. Now for the rotation. We're gonna do local rotation. Returning an identity. Now like that, it's gonna be the rotation relative to the parent's rotation. So if I set it to 0, it's gonna be the exact rotation of the parent. Now we're gonna use the local scale. Equals new vector 3. Gonna make this 0.03f. 0.3f. And then I'm gonna set this to 0.5f. I always use these scales because I like them. Now, the hand is rotated a little bit weird. So imagine this as the z-axis, like the length of the menu. And then this is the width of the menu, and this is the height of the menu. Just think of it like that. Now we can set up the rendering. It's pretty straightforward from here. Yeah, I'll do it real quick. I get component renderer. I guess shader farm. Shader farm. And then we're gonna do a brush shader. Just like that. Now we're gonna get rid of this. Now we're gonna set the color. Just gonna set this to like color black. Just like that. So we have gorilla tag reverse shader. And then now we gotta destroy the menu. Now we gotta set the destroy menu part. Now this is pretty simple. You can just do destroy menu OBJ. So we're just using Unity's destroy system. But we also gotta make sure that it's null. Because if it's not null, then it won't meet this condition when we press the button, and we won't be able to set the menu the second time. Okay, yeah, so I actually just forgot something. So this menu instance does not exist at all when you run the game. So you actually have to set up something inside the plugins class called like a class handler or a component holder. So you can name it anything that you want. I'm just naming it class handler. It's easy. Actually, I'll just use some little functions to start putting interventions. Now make sure. Now inside here, we're gonna do class handler dot add component menu. And then you can do this. Now, this might destroy it on load. I'm not sure why it does that. Actually, no. You can actually like enable that chain loader thing I was talking about earlier, but I don't think it's gonna do it for me. So now you can build your project this time around. So we're now inside the game. As you can see, when I press the primary button, my menu appears. Now that will be all for this video. In the next video, I will be doing examples on colliders and stuff like that. And then we'll set up the buttons for the menu. And that will be all for this video. See y'all later.